All right, what's up? Welcome to a new episode of Movie Schmovie. This is episode number 312, 312, 312, covering all the ways we can say it, but it's the one after 311. And my name's Steve. I'm one of the co-hosts of the show, and I'm here as always with.
I'm Ron.
And John.
And we, again, are going to be talking about a lot of stuff on today's episode. We're going to try to make it really efficient, nice and lean, not so mean, but just very informative. And,
lean and clean.
Lean and clean. It's a good option, John. I like that. Much more positive. I like it. Yeah. But yeah, we got some feature reviews that we're going to talk about in a moment. But just to start the show off, between recording last week and this week, a pretty big trailer came out that has been kind of sought after for many months. And it's the trailer for Marvel's newest Spider-Man entry that Sony's going to be releasing in December, Spider-Man No Way Home. This week was CinemaCon, which is like a big convention out in Vegas. And it was rumored that this was going to be one of the big drops on, what was it, Monday night?
Yeah.
And funny enough, the night before its drop, it made the news even beforehand that somebody apparently had leaked an unfinished bootleg of a bootleg or a TikTok of a phone or whatever that inception
with the person who has access to
their watermark.
So like, oh man, they're screwed, man.
Yeah, there's no doubt that person
that was the video. That was the video because I found a link. I was so curious at a certain point, and I'm trailers are trailers anyway. So I was like, okay, if this is really a trailer, it's not going to spoil that much. I'm curious what people are talking about, and so I found. I guess I thought I was looking at some bootleg of the bootleg, but I guess I looked at what it was, which is like an awkwardly oriented shot of an awkwardly oriented phone that was showing clearly a version of the trailer that we saw very soon after that, which just didn't have any effect shots in it and had it just in general felt very unfinished. But it was sort of enough there to make me go, oh wow, yeah, this is really it. Like this is not the Hawkeye trailer.
Right.
You beat me to it.
I mean, like this is like you could knock together something with elements and make it look shitty enough that someone a very smart, very educated person might think it was real if they were squinting at it in the early morning hours. Very small. After a few glasses of wine the night before. So, but at any rate, I think that there is a kind of thing where there was hype for this trailer and there was hype for why it wasn't coming. And so this leak before the trailer, it almost kind of added to it didn't take away from it in a sense. It kind of added to it for me because then it was like, okay, now we all know that some of the stuff people are rumoring to be in this movie is in this movie. And then when the actual trailer came out, it was, I think you, Steve, said something about how it was almost anticlimactic to finally actually see the trailer.
Yeah.
But I watched it a few times, and by the time I'd seen it the second or third time, whatever that kind of been there, done that aspect to the information that was revealed, that was gone. And I was just going, oh my God, I can't wait to see like some of these plot turns and some of these things they have in store based on the indications of what the story might be. So I had, and also my son, we watch all the Marvel trailers when they come out and he's always a little excited and we talk a little bit about it. So Eternals got him going a little bit. Shang-Chi's had him interested. But after this, I mean, he was like coming up to me for like half a day going, so do you think Doc Ock is like, I think there's, you've said it before, Ronald, Spider-Man is kind of the shit for Marvel.
Yeah.
So there's something there's potency to what they do with that character.
So much so that Sony's renamed their universe.
Yeah. But still clunky sounding. It still doesn't roll off the tongue. It's like Sony's Spider-Man universe.
Yes. So weird. They're banking on him, man, and I don't know what that means for the future of. I don't know what that means for the future of Spider-Man as we know it, because it seems like Sony has a plan that is definitely beyond what the MCU has planned. That is going to correlate Spider-Man's relationship with these characters that we've never seen Spider-Man in. Venom's, the Carnages, the Morbius. That's coming. But this is what we've been waiting for in the MCU, which is essentially like, the big reveal after the movie with Mysterio being an asshole and giving away, Peter Parker's identity to the world, sharing that with everybody, and the effects of that, and how he's dealing with the fame. It's kind of like this commentary on fame too, because the likelihood of a person getting famous now, anybody, is very high. So, Spider-Man just becoming a famous person overnight, Peter Parker becoming a famous person overnight, is a pretty cool idea that I haven't seen tackled like this.
Yeah. I think it'll be interesting because it's like we talk about it too much, honestly, but like you see the trailer come out, and I don't know if you guys saw the numbers that came out today, but it was announced that like the Spider-Man No Way Home trailer broke the 24-hour all-time record for the most global views since its release Monday night. That it had 355.5 million trailer views, which is more than the previous holder, which was Avengers Endgame, and that had 289 million. So like it almost was like almost 100 million more. And I mean, and that's global. And I think like domestic, it's still like 1.5 times as many. And even like social media impact on I don't even know what they call that. It's like the mentions in 24-hour cycles or whatever. Like even that was like I thought I saw a number here.
We used to call those clicks. We used to call those clicks, Steve.
Yeah, 2.91 million mentions on social media in 24 hours, where Endgame had 1.9, so a million more. And it did that within 12 hours of the trailer coming out. Like it beat all to just say, like, it's been a weird conversation around these big movies coming out in theaters, but there's obviously a very large want to see this movie. And, you've had movies like Suicide Squad come out and not perform. And we're talking about Shang-Chi and what's going to happen with the Eternals, and even Venom, like you mentioned, Ronald. There's rumors now that may be moving off of its October date. And I think, again, that's all going to be dependent on Shang-Chi. But there's no denying that Spider-Man No Way Home is the movie that probably will be either the first back, like, massive hit, or the last one we see. Yeah. Like, it's still coasting off of something that is very large. It's still kind of coming out of, Far From Home, and like even the Endgame, after effects still is there,
and the multiverse stuff.
Right. And I mean, like the Disney Plus series, like it's kind of talking to all these things, but it's such a weird thing because you look at those numbers and like, you're like, oh my God, like it was more than Endgame, like 1.5 times more than Endgame. And this is a single character, even though we see Doctor Strange in the trailer. But it's just really cool to see the want to see it to be so high. And I mean, everybody wants to see it. And I do feel like the trailer, to me at least, while it makes me super excited to see the movie, it's just it's like the anticipation almost got to a point where maybe it was waiting too long. And I'm obviously, with these numbers, people were dying to see it, and they probably watched it multiple times, like you said you did, John.
Some
like,
nerds
I'm sure we
did,
all did. Yeah, it's just like the kind of thing where you're like, it's reassuring to know that a movie, like whenever it ends up coming out, and it should be around Christmas, it does feel like that movie has the best chance at replicating what a blockbuster looked like in theaters pre-pandemic. And either it's going to be the first one back, or maybe the last remnant of something that was still kind of sticking around. Yeah. And it and Bond probably are the two, but I mean, Spider-Man, like this character is it right now. I mean, like this is the one.
And this movie is super hyped too, from all the stories and rumors. And I think it looks like a smart story, because it looks like the reason we're getting into this multiversal stuff in this movie might be like with Peter Parker. It's always good to have like a personal choice that's like a fuck up that he's sort of kicking himself for throughout the movie. As much as you hate to see it, that's what Peter Parker does. He messes up, and then he kind of like he really overpays for it, Right. And I think this trailer serves up a cool premise based on all the stuff we've seen before in the MCU. The use of magic tied in with the kind of sci-fi multiversal stuff. But I also think that there's a what was do you know the story, Ronald, the Spider-Man story that it's a comic book, One More Day or One Good Day?
I know there was one
More Day is a 4-part 2007 comic book crossover storyline connected to the 3 main story Spider-Man series. Basically, it was a story where, like, where's the information about it? I think that Aunt May dies, and then, well, anyway, a bunch of shit happens, and Spider-Man wants to undo some stuff, and so he goes to a character Mephisto, who's like a demonic character, and he gets to undo things that have happened to him. This feels like, that MCU way of like dealing in a sideways way with a comic book story. This feels like that. This feels like they're going to give this Peter Parker personal choice that has earth-shaking consequences, and it can tie in or not to the stuff we saw in Loki. Frankly, it almost looks like a totally different attack at that. But how could it be a different multiverse? You know what I mean? There's going to be something come up in this movie. And I guess we might be playing around with the what ifs of the trailer. But a lot of people are theorizing that maybe Doctor Strange is not truly Doctor Strange. I think that feels a little far-fetched based on what he seems capable of. Yeah. But maybe multiple versions or variants of a character like that will be in this movie. I don't know.
I only have one gripe with this. Only one. And I bet you can't guess what it is.
Let me see if I can guess.
It doesn't have to do with it doesn't have to do with the movie itself. It has to do with the timing of it. It hurts my feelings a little bit that this came out before Shang-Chi did. Because it took the heat off that movie a little bit.
You mean the trailer dropping before Shang-Chi?
Yeah, the trailer dropping
when it seemed like they were saying they were waiting. Like when Kevin Feige, when he would talk about it, he sort of seemed like he was saying, hey guys, we got a lot of stuff coming out. Give us a second.
There's something, I gotta be honest, man. There's something that feels like old white man about this move, man. There's something, this movie is the culmination of like this real initiative to like have diversity in the MCU, right? This thing needs all the attention it can get. It's a new property. People don't really know the character. It needs all the attention that it can get. And right smack dab in the middle with the like, oh, this is an experiment. And then right before the experiment happens, you drop one of the biggest trailers in the MCU history because this is like a good time for this thing to come out. I mean, like, we're familiar with Spider-Man. He's evolving as a character. We love him. Why the fuck couldn't they have waited until the movie came out a day after? I'm not saying like,
or just attach it to it.
Yeah, have it be the trailer before the movie starts, so you can be like, oh my god, Spider-Man. Oh, I'm ready for this movie. It's something so like you have to understand, man. Like, while sometimes things don't seem like they're very intentional to other people, they are very intentional to us. Minorities who really want to fight for our faces to be on the screen, right? Because it seems like an absence of consideration of these things. It's fucked up. That's the only, like, I don't blame that on Tom Holland. That's not Tom Holland's fault. That's not anybody that did Spider-Man's fault. It's Disney always doing things like that when it comes to people of color. It's been happening, man. It's so...
Well, this isn't Disney.
Sony. But it's MCU. Okay, you know what I mean?
It's MCU.
Though. Yeah,
it's MCU. Yeah, I just don't want to.
And it might have been Sony's. It might have been Sony's attempt to overshadow MCU just in general, just to be like, haha, we have a movie that's more impactful than the movie that's about to come out.
But so you don't think the leak? I mean, I guess the leak is the leak. Yeah, just still wait.
They could have waited a little bit. It's coming out the 5th. It's not like it's coming out the 30th of September.
No, I was surprised for that reason. It hasn't done anything to dampen my excitement, so I guess I didn't think of it from that perspective. But I did think it was odd that it was like, oh, I thought they were putting that out after Shang-Chi. I just, in my head, I had decided, oh, that's why
you're a logical person, John.
But I also I wonder if there's some argument to be made within their mindset that like, now Shang-Chi gets to have its own moment where it's not like then being followed up. Like it's got a few weeks where there's nothing that people are clamoring for that's coming after it to kind of steal its moment. But I do think you're right that like there's still something. No, it's I honestly feel like this flurry of trailers for stuff that's coming out in the last part of the year. I don't know if I think it feels sweaty or something, but it does feel a little bit like they're trying to say, guys, they're still coming out. We're still putting these movies out, like, because it was the same week that we wondered about, like, I feel like 2 weeks ago we were talking about, oh wow, we haven't seen much on Eternals and there hasn't been anything on Spider-Man. Are they going to do this? And it was like within the next 2 weeks, they seem to double down on trying to reassure people that these movies are coming out when they're supposed to come out. And what you said, Steve, about maybe that's it. I do think maybe that's the way they'll handle this, is that it would suck for them if Spider-Man underperforms because it's part of this experiment.
Right.
But I think they're prepared to burn off the rest of this year, everything they intended to put out, just to be like,
yes.
Because everything else is kind of a little bit, I mean, maybe there are dates attached that I just haven't thought about for things like Doctor Strange and that sort of stuff, but that sort of thing can get kind of moved around a little bit without seeming so, like a big change. Like there's some reason why they want to seem bullish about the next few months in terms of box office and everything else. But I really don't think people are going to be showing up in droves to the theaters, but who knows? Maybe by December, things will be completely different. I just can't picture it.
I just think this is a shitty move, man. Like, it hurts my feelings. I just think that there are ways that you can do this, because this 25th, what was it, the 23rd of August, that date, and September 5th wouldn't have made a difference in that thing doing the numbers that it did. People would have still been fucking going ape shit for this trailer. I just wish they would have waited just a little bit. It feels like they don't care, man. It feels like the run is done. Shang-Chi, they did their promotion. Shang-Chi is done. Shang-Chi is done.
I'm getting used to it too, Ronald.
I hope not.
Have you noticed that all the commercials for Shang-Chi, the announcer
us.
now comes in and says the name really clearly? Like they've now got a guy coming in saying, Shang-Chi, the Legend of the Ten Rings. It's like they want to make sure we all know, because I think everyone in the world was saying it wrong, or at least everyone I heard.
And they showed that
like a year and a half.
The trailer now has that scene where Shang-Chi is saying it to Awkwafina.
Yeah.
So that's just trying to.
No, there was the new trailer that came out that really was like, wow, this trailer was really trying to sell the fun and the action, and there's a little bit more of a look at the fight choreography and stuff. It looks wild.
Looks nuts.
Yeah, I can't wait.
I went and saw well, I won't review it here because John already talked about it, but I went and saw Old and in theaters, and the newer Shang-Chi trailer was attached to it. And that trailer did more for me for this whole thing than any marketing. Oh my God, the newest trailer on the big screen,
that makes me happy, man.
Knocked me out, dude. Like the one that has like the hip hop track over it.
Yeah.
It feels very energetic, and it's just kinetic, and like it just seems like the fights and the humor and just like the lore of what they're trying to do with that character is just it's just really, really good. I hope it just surprises everybody and just fucking kicks ass.
And I wasn't trying to like be a downer about it. It just if I could speak pretty honestly about the way that it felt when I saw that, I love Spider-Man. You guys know we all love Spider-Man. I just was like, God, just wait like 2 weeks.
You couldn't just. It's totally, and I'm not saying this to defend it. Mm-hmm. The reason that it came out when it did is because of the CinemaCon. That's that Absolutely. And Ghostbusters are like their big Sony showcase, and those are the two probably buzziest things coming out of CinemaCon. So like that's what they're going for. Like they're going for the win.
Let's try to go to CinemaCon next year, man. It's
in Vegas.
Let's go to Vegas. Let's stay in. Let them surprise us with a Marvel movie.
Well, they had that. They had the Ghostbusters. There was like a Bond reel. I know that they said that the Matrix 4 reel was today. That apparently was amazing.
Yeah, Resurrection. What a cool name.
Resurrections, yeah. So a lot of stuff coming out of there, but I don't know. Absolutely. The Spider-Man is definitely the big bombshell of the whole week so far. But I don't know. Big numbers, big expectations. We'll see if it actually comes out in December.
Yeah,
we'll see.
Right.
Probably not. Let's see.
We'll probably know in 2 weeks after Shang-Chi comes out.
Yes.
Unfortunately. All right, cool. Well, let's move into some of the reviews this week.
I'm excited to hear what Ronald thought of Candyman. I've been waiting for this movie for it seems like forever.
Yeah, man. This is one of those movies. It's beautifully shot. It has a very specific idea about what it wants to say, And I think because of that, that is going to split the room. Because it feels so heavy-handed in this message, and it feels very necessary, right? Like, Nia DaCosta really has an eye for creating this sense of dread and tension and stuff like that. Don't think of this as like, you aren't going to get any jump scares. So, like, get that out of your head. But you will be tense and worried for the entire movie. This movie does a really good job of kind of depicting this tension. There's layers and layers of this stuff, man. Like the art world and its perception, kind of like black artists coming into spaces and being judged by their authenticity, their accounts of things, and having them judged by the white gaze. That's one layer of it. And then kind of like gentrification and what that means for a neighborhood and trauma that's really and a lot of times, whether people realize it or not, handed down genetically. There's been scientific studies that have proven that trauma is kind of genetically handed down from from one generation to the other, man. So like there's this real heavy stuff that kind of wanders around in this movie. So like if you're not prepared to experience that, stay out of this movie. But if you're ready to, if you're okay with the idea of being a little uncomfortable, because it does make you uncomfortable, and being put through some of the weirdest visuals, man, like it just is really good storytelling. And I think that that's kind of what's getting stuck in all of this stuff. Is I feel really bad because black artists are really in this cool space where movies are being made, script idea to the screen. And that's not a very old concept. It's very new, right? Especially in the horror space. So coming in this, I had a lot of hesitation. This is Candyman. I really enjoyed the first one. I really enjoyed when we talked about it.
But when we talked about it, we thought it was the one thing it didn't do was ever really deal very clearly with any of the racial themes. It's like it used that for kind of window dressing, it felt like. And so I thought from the new trailer, it was obvious that this new version was going to deal with that stuff in a much more kind of moral gray kind of way, that it was going to depict things in a different way. And I guess I'm saying if there were people that were surprised by that when they saw this, they didn't very carefully watch the trailer, because you could tell the hints of it being like, and again, this is what makes it really exciting to me, I guess, is that they're actually going to deal with that stuff that the first movie kind of used as like to get you drawn in, but never really wanted to deal with like the circumstances of what happened to the original Candyman and like the racism inherent of that. And then even just the fact that you've got like a white heroine in this black neighborhood, basically in the first movie. And it doesn't really try to explain that. I don't know. I think
it fleshes that out, man.
No, I'm very excited about the new movie being made with that. Because I mean, again, the team that's behind it, these people are going to say, all right, let's make a movie for 2021, and maybe even let's reclaim some of the missed opportunities of the first one. But there has been like a mixed reaction. I haven't really been reading many reviews. Are there issues that bumped you at all while you were watching it, or was it pretty much a success for you?
I guess the idea is like, this could have just been a slasher film. I mean, but it's not. And a lot of it is like, if you remember the pacing of the first Candyman, it takes a little while before Candyman starts wreaking havoc, and this does too. So if you're looking for like, some James Wan screaming at every turn and jump scares, and by the way, I gotta say this, James Wan is one of the best horror directors in the past couple of years. And, his style of horror is something I think that we're getting adjusted. When I hear people talk about scary movies, they're typically talking about his movies, his things that are under his banner, presented by James Wan. Like that's typically what I'm hearing when people talk about horror now. You aren't going to get that with this film. So like if your expectations are to have like that sort of scare from from start to finish, that's not what you're gonna get. So that's one of the things that I think is very hard when you know, if you're like, oh, have you seen Get Out? Oh, also see Candyman. They aren't the same movie. They aren't like at all the same movie because people are kind of lumping them together. I've been seeing people kind of saying like, I'm tired of these trauma movies like Candyman and Get Out. Like they're not the same on any level to me, but I'd say that rubbed me the wrong way. The fact that the pacing's a little slower than I would have liked. And it's not, like I said, it's not the film that I would necessarily like, here, watch this movie. You know how you could tell anybody to see Get Out? You could be like, hey, go see Get Out. Yeah. It'll fucking, this will tilt people, man. There's a lot of people that will be very offended by the messaging of this film. I'll say that.
Wow.
For real. Like, it's not even like, I know that it will. Because people aren't used to things having this kind of opinion about art and trauma and racism, and you know, it's different.
It sounds pretty heavy.
It's like if Get Out was heavier. It's like if Get Out was like, I have a lot to say.
And this sounds like, so it's so interesting. Like I can't wait to see it. I feel like it makes me, like, the way you're describing it is like, and what I've been reading about it makes me very concerned for the movie itself. Like, because it seems like the movie is going to like not do well, like from that divisiveness and like, especially of like what the marketing, you know, we get into this conversation a lot with the marketing of horror movies and things like that. Like, and it's very, very intentional that these horror movies are great vessels to like make comments and statements about society and like, and it should be, and it always has been. And in a lot of ways, that's where it's most successful, you know? But I feel like certain films, while they, you know, I haven't seen it yet, so I can't say how I feel about it, but like, even if it's a good movie, I feel like the audience expectation of like what they think a Candyman movie is going to be, it sounds like how divisive all these reviews have been. And even listening to your take on it, it makes me concerned that this movie is going to like not be well received by like a general movie going audience that decides to go see it. Cause it is like it's a theatrical only release, right? I mean, like it's Universal's like standard. It's going to be out for a couple weeks and then I guess be on video on demand.
Yeah, that's what it seems like, man. So
I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how well this does this weekend, for sure.
Yeah, Candyman.
Don't say it too many times. You've already said it.
I got scared. I was like, I
don't. Why don't you guys tell me about Reminiscence? Okay, I think you just did. Okay, move on.
Shortest review we've ever done in the podcast. No, honestly, like I think there's a really like interesting story in Reminiscence.
Yeah.
I think you know, like all these big idea sci-fi noir thriller kind of movies, like, you know, it's not as convoluted in general as I thought it might be from the trailers.
Right.
Like in terms of like how layered it is, and like, you know, like Inception, and you know, like you know, because a lot of people were like thinking Inception type level stuff, and like all the meanings, and it's like there's some ambiguity in the film, but I mean it's a pretty straight narrative once it actually gets to what it's getting to at the end, without any spoilers. But I mean, I think that, you know, the world building it does, I think, has a really interesting premise. You know, like the world that they're in, I think is actually really cool. Like the idea that, you know, these coastal cities like Miami and New Orleans are like half underwater, and like the water is what is like segregating the demographics of the cities even more than they already were. And like just how violent, it's a pretty interesting idea, you know, that would force people to seek out a character like Hugh Jackman, who has a service where like you basically can just relive your memories, like the good times, quote unquote, you know, the nostalgia of times when life was better. So, I mean, some of these things are really interesting. And I mean, the mystery that exists inside of the movie, you know, that's where I think it kind of falls apart. You know, like I feel like it tries to pull like a little bit of a LA Confidential vibe, which it doesn't really accomplish.
Yeah.
And I don't really think that anybody in the movie is particularly that good, or, you know, who I like pretty much everybody in this movie. Like Hugh Jackman is one of my favorites. I love Rebecca Ferguson, Tandy Newton. I mean, there's so many faces that pop up, and you're like, oh yeah, I recognize him or her, and they're usually pretty good. And they're not really bad in the movie, but it's just the script's not that great, and I think the movie kind of loses track of itself like after like 45 minutes.
Yeah.
But I don't know. You don't really get a lot of these movies, so it's like I don't know. I don't want to like look a gift horse in the face and like be like, don't make these movies. Like make them, but maybe maybe make them a little better, I guess. But I don't know.
Yeah,
what do you think, Ronald?
The problem with that is Tenet could have been Reminiscence. Alien could have been Reminiscence, in the way that you have ideas that this isn't like this is a bad idea. This is incredible. Like some of the things that they're doing in this film are very, very cool, right? But then when you start doing like, oh, let's have like an Asian man that was put in a camp in New Orleans and now has a New Orleans accent, and he's a crime boss that's with a heart of gold, but it's like, yo, who the fuck wrote this script? Like, you need to streamline some of these ideas, and it sounds like this would be an incredible book, not a good movie, right? Not a good movie at all. Some things aren't meant.
Sounds like a good graphic novel.
Yes, that's exactly what. Good book, good graphic novel. There's something about the bones of this idea, like Steve was saying, that are just really cool. But where this thing fails is this execution, this character development. There weren't that many visual effects, really. It's just like it kind of was. Also, Hugh Jackman. This is the most unsexy I've ever seen Hugh Jackman, and I mean like just like they're forcing the sexy on Hugh Jackman, and I think his gift is in kind of just being himself, right? And he's just kind of like, he's doing the look and trying to seduce people with his eyes, and just like, what? Why would they do this to? Clearly, many regard him as one of the most attractive people acting right now in the in the past 20 years, right? And they're like, I want you to be sleazeball sexy, and I want you to also be like a detective narrating this whole film. Just like it's too many. This should have just been a detective story in one time that is not a dystopian future or something. It had too many things. Yeah. Just,
I mean, it's so Lisa Joy is the writer director. This is her feature directorial debut. She's most known for Westworld.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of Westworld people in it.
Yeah, her and Jonathan Nolan kind of do that series, and so the feel is in this movie, like of those, like there's some consistency there. So I mean, like some of it, and that's why I think some of it does work, and I think the reach just overextends. I think a bit into what the most interesting stuff in the movie is. I think it just kind of gets a little convoluted by trying to be more than it needs. And like Cliff Curtis is in it, who is usually like, I love him, and it's like what he's doing in this movie is really weird, and I don't know. It's just some odd stuff in this movie.
Yeah.
But it's on HBO Max. It's also in theaters where it bombed, so I don't think many people went to see it. But I mean, if you have HBO Max, maybe check it out. I don't know. It's not something that I would recommend immediately, but if you're looking for something that's a little sci-fi-y, don't watch it.
Malignant's the next horror film, right? I mean, the next film on HBO, Day and Date, right?
The Day and Date, I believe. So that's the James Wan one, right?
Or the cowboy one, right? Or the Clint Eastwood one.
Cry Macho.
Yeah. But
I think Malignant might be before that. Yeah.
Okay, but don't wait for Malignant. Don't see this one. Yeah.
Well, I think another one that the two of you saw that I have not seen that I think you actually liked a lot more.
Again.
Coda.
And let's begin. Let's make some
noise. So this would be the opposite of Reminiscence.
Oof.
I think Coda is my favorite movie of the year.
Wow.
Just to kind of jump out hot with that real quick. I had heard really great things about this. I think it was like last year at Sundance or wherever, where Apple bought it for like $25 million. It was a huge bidding war. And it was like, where's this movie going to end up? And I just had heard one of the film bloggers that I follow, Jeff Snyder. I listen to his podcast. He's been like just gushing over this movie forever. So when it finally came out, I was really, really excited to see it. And I was just completely bowled over by this movie. I don't know if it's just simply because of like maybe a lack of great movies recently, or like, needing some more emotion in my movie. I don't know what it was, but something just hit right for me. This movie is on Apple TV Plus, and I think I want to say the filmmaker, what's her name? Is it Sean or Shion? I think she signed a development deal with them as a part of.
Oh wow!
As a part of them purchasing the film. Excuse me, when they got it, but basically it's about a young girl who's like the only hearing member of a deaf family, and this dream that she has of being a musician, being a singer, and like the push and pull of being that vital member of the family that kind of connects them to mainstream culture in their community, and being able to maybe pursue an opportunity to see your dreams through, and so I don't know. It's a really interesting movie. Like, I can't recommend it enough. I think the performances are outstanding. I hope this movie somehow can find legs and stick around come time for Oscar talk, because I think that the lead actress, Amelia Jones, who I really haven't seen in anything else, I thought she was just phenomenal in this movie. And, it's really an interesting movie to watch. Like, I would challenge anybody, even if it kind of sounds like you don't like watching movies with subtitles, like, there's something so interesting watching this family interact with one another, even through reading subtitles on the screen, just like the emotion that, a person, who uses sign language has to, use their bodies to talk in ways, and like, which I don't know that I've ever seen in as much as a prolonged period, you know what I mean? Like, as a full film, where every single one, except for one of the main characters, is doing that. And she's even doing it more than half the time. It's just, it's a really great experience. And like, the performances across the board are amazing. The last 20 minutes, I think, is just emotional crescendo. Like, it was great, man. I love this movie so much. And I've recommended it to a bunch of people. Like, that weekend I saw it, and I mean, every single person that actually went through with it and watched it just got back to me. It was like, I love that movie so much. So I hope it finds people, because it's just a delight of a movie. What did you think, Ronald?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty spectacular, man. I think sometimes, I think there's like this treatment of people with disabilities, like they don't have love and life, and they aren't sexy or whatever. Like, that's another thing, man. These parents are like infatuated with each other.
Yeah, they're hot for one another.
And beautiful people, real charismatic and super like gutter mouth guy people who do it in sign language, and it's conveyed in this way that just you haven't seen people with disabilities portrayed in this way. Like, it just hasn't been done. Like, it humanizes people in a way that I just haven't seen before, and that the sense of dread, I think everybody's kind of felt this feeling where you want to separate from your parents and you don't know how to do it, in a way that feels like, you feel like everything's going to break apart if you leave them, and they make you feel like that, and that is conveyed so well in this film. And it's not done in like a terrible, they aren't terrible people. They're really just love the shit out of each other, and the thought of them living in different places or doing different things just is agonizing to them. So seeing this play out in a cool way is just, it is one of the best movies I think I've ever seen. It's just like, I get
wow.
What Steve's saying.
Yeah, I mean, John, I can't wait for you to see it, man. Like, it's just there's so many boxes that it checks, in just terms of being an original story. There's nothing, we've seen these like coming of age movies. Like, there's a whole coming of age element of this character, this daughter, this teenager who's in high school, finishing school to go to college. There's this a love, for with her, or this character that she like, kind of is pining after. There's all these things like in this movie that are just things that happen in lots of movies, But I think this movie just does a really great job of like balancing it all around the idea of this family existing in a world that does not conform to them and they feel like they have to conform to. And the idea of taking the element out of their circle that helps them fit in is like the biggest challenge the family's ever faced, and it forces them to really realize like how they use their daughter in ways that maybe it's not fair to her. Yeah. And you know, it's just really emotional, and it's just a really great just love letter to like the strength of family. You know, I don't know, it just felt really good to watch this movie. Like it was such a positive experience, and I think we all, you know, need that right now. So if you have Apple TV Plus, please find this movie, Coda, CODA. It's worth your time. I guarantee it.
Yeah.
No, I remember when you first posted about being kind of blown away by it, Steve, that I was just like, okay, this must be something potent, because you don't, you know, and then you kind of agreed on that same text thread, Ronald. So I was like, okay, we don't, you know, it's not like you said a lot about it, but normally that kind of emotional power, when we comment on that, there's usually something there. So I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Cool.
And what else we got? We got one more
movie that we've all seen.
That we all see. Yeah. Yes. So John, why don't you talk about Stillwater, John? Tell us what it is and what you thought about it.
Well, Stillwater is a movie that it's interesting, because I think even when you see it listed, like its genre is listed as like drama, thriller, you know, like it kind of is and isn't what you think it is. If you saw the trailer for it and it looked like a kind of like a Clint Eastwood movie or something like that, you know, you might be expecting it to be a little bit more reactionary or jingoistic or something. This character you think you've seen before, this American character who goes into a situation and kind of barges his way in and uses the power of his Americanness, you know, to like set things right and even or die trying. But I think one of the things that's interesting about the character that Matt Damon plays in this movie, and we are pretty much with him the whole time, it's sort of, the movie refuses to give him that storyline that we've seen before. It refuses to give him that solution where him, you know, and if you could say Americanness, you could say patriarchal, whatever, you could say whatever that kind of, I mean, if you wanted to make it more, I don't know if there's much of a racial element in the movie, but there are some racial themes going on with like the people who might get blamed for the crime and that sort of stuff. So there's some like racism against Arabs in this movie for sure, but it's not like as front and center as just the kind of, somehow this guy's whiteness is still a big part of the movie, you know? And like just the notion that he thinks he can go into any situation and kind of just force his way through it, even though this is not a guy who's particularly confident or particularly like he kind of gets swept up in it a little bit, but he's trying to help his daughter in a situation where it's basically ripped from the Amanda Knox storyline, but it's moved to Paris. But it's basically just this idea of a guy whose daughter's been in prison for 5 years in France, and it's a crime he doesn't believe she committed. And he is going over there to sort of help her out. She's got a message she wants to get to her lawyer, and there's like a little bit of a back and forth there, but after a while it seems like the dad feels that he's the only chance she has to sort of ferret out the truth behind this case and maybe find the person that really did it. And you are sort of getting ready for that type of street justice kind of movie that could easily have been made with this storyline. And yet, you know, it's a Tom McCarthy movie. And it's set in France, yes, but it's also written, I think, by a couple of French writers. There was just a little bit about the way this movie, like the people behind this movie, that made me think, oh, this isn't going to be that jingoistic portrayal. It's not going to be that, you know, kind of like worship of the man with the gun kind of guy. It's much more deconstructive than that. I won't say that the movie didn't kind of threaten to lose me with its like loose rhythms and it's like the way that but it's a Tom McCarthy movie, so I was kind of ready for it to be sort of have quiet moments in it and stretches where maybe not a lot seems to be happening. But I thought there was some really good like kind of delicate acting. I think Matt Damon is one of those people, whatever you think of him personally, he's capable of like really playing a character and getting into it. And I thought he was a little Sling Blade in this, like he was playing this guy as a little bit of like a cartoonishly taciturn you know, stoic person, but there were some moments of almost humor that came from like there's even a moment where the question of who this guy voted for comes up, and you realize you've been kind of waiting for, you've been kind of wondering that about him the whole time too. And the movie, I think, sidesteps it in a way that lets him be like still a little bit of a cipher, but he's also kind of an empty guy, or just like he's a guy who kind of moves towards a task and just does it, but he's not a flashy character. And it's not like it's not that movie. It's not Death Wish or whatever you think it might be. Some guy hitting the streets and cracking heads. Anyway, I enjoyed it for all the reasons that it kind of surprised me. I do think that when I got to the end, it was one of those movies where I was kind of like, oh, I'm done. It's like 2 hours and 20 minutes and very slow paced, but there's some cool stuff in it. And there was even like a little bit of that kind of meditative idea that like it ended on a note like No Country for Old Men, or a story like that, where you're realizing this main character is kind of witnessing the world moving on without them, and seeing how, maybe pondering their own relevance to anything that ever happened. It's I don't know. It's I guess I'm talking it up in a way. It definitely had a lot going for it. What did you guys think of Stillwater?
Steve?
I was surprised how much I liked it. I think, to be honest with you, like I didn't really like know a whole lot going into it outside of like the headlines that were kind of hitting the week after it had been out in theaters or so, like with the Amanda Knox, kind of speaking out on, kind of like using her story without really talking, like basically involving her at all in this whole thing, even though it's not based on it, inspired by whatever you want to, I don't know the proper term, but so that kind of is what, put it more on my radar. I was more so curious at that point.
Yeah.
Because the trailers didn't really do much for me, but I mean, when it came on to VOD, this week, it was like, yeah, I'll check it out. But I don't know. I really like Matt Damon. I think he's really good in the movie. I mean, like it's kind of one of those things, like you were saying, John, where the character is like, he's kind of like an empty character that kind of sees one thing that he wants to get done, which is try to help his daughter. Yeah. Who, he's kind of been absent for the majority of her life, or not there for the majority of her life. And, that's kind of really where he comes alive. And when he meets that family in France and, kind of has this relationship with the daughter there, kind of as a, it kind of, I think that's where some of the character stuff comes out the best, and that's kind of where some of the best work is done in the movie by Matt Damon and that young actress too. I think she's great in the movie. But yeah, I don't know. I was kind of surprised, like kind of how, I couldn't peg the movie, the through the movie as you're watching it. It does kind of shapeshift from time to time to feeling like it's going to be like a true crime, like procedural, whatever, or, like a revenge thing, or, take a turn or whatever. And it kind of ends up, on a note that's a little more melancholy. And it's kind of like what's going on.
Yeah.
In life, like, I don't know, it was way more meditative than I thought it would be, like by the time we got to the end of the movie. But I did think the performances were really good. The story I thought was pretty interesting. And I just feel like it's like another one of these like weird movies that like you want them to still be making, but it's like this movie comes out in theaters and I don't feel like anybody's talking about it, and it stars a big star.
Yeah.
And
well, it didn't look good. The trailer, like you said,
right? That's what I'm saying. The trailer didn't do anything for me. And like enough of the like, I like Matt Damon, so I want to watch it, was there for me. But I was like, I'll watch it when it comes out. And then when it dropped early, or because of the VOD stuff, like I don't know, it just it surprised me. I'll be honest. Like I it's not like a great movie. Like I did like it more than I thought I would, and I would say for sure for the performances, which are all really good. And I mean, I think for the kind of movie it ends up being, I think my biggest complaint would really be that I feel like it gets to, like in the third act, a lot of that stuff is sped up too much for, like you said, as long as the movie is, there was a lot more free, there was more time to develop some of that stuff, or to kind of like pace some of it out more. And it kind of rushes in that last like 20, 30 minutes.
I think it's one of those intentional things that doesn't work that well. I mean, that doesn't work towards the drama of the movie, because I think they're trying to do something deliberate by saying that all this important stuff happened off screen,
right,
while we were watching a guy kind of spinning his wheels. But I agree that you can only go so far with that premise before the movie itself starts to seem like, well, why are you showing me the story you're showing me then? If the whole point is that this is not where it's happening. But no, I agree that some of that stuff felt like particularly rushed, especially, given the slow pace of the thing.
Yeah. What about you, Ronald? I know you had some thoughts on it.
Yeah, sometimes I think there's like this idea that I don't know, man. We it's a genetic lottery. You kind of are. You're born where you're born, and you are the person you are because of the set of circumstances that you live under, right? And then you have a guy that's like put in a place that's totally different than what he knows, and this stuff starts blossoming around him. And I think it was obviously awful circumstances. His daughter was accused of murder, and she went to jail for 5 years. But like, you know, it is super sad that, like, you know, you kind of, this is a guy in a southern state, and he's living his life. He's doing construction, and he could have been a cool Frenchman. You know, it's just that when you travel, you realize that that's all it is. It's just a genetic lottery. People just get plopped in places, and they live. So I had
Ronald. I just want you to know you could have been a cool Frenchman too.
Thanks, man. Thanks, man.
I actually view you as a cool Frenchman already.
That is very nice.
But with no French speaking, no French. Like it's just a random thing I've assigned to you.
So what does a cool Frenchman do? If we're assuming like if a basic Frenchman has like a striped white and black shirt on and a beret, and he's got like he's riding a bike with a baguette in the basket on the front. And he's going like,
He works in a small Frenchman. Cafe. He makes.
What does a cool Frenchman do?
I don't know, man. I went to this. I was this guy. I don't know if I can sound like an asshole right now, but Aaron and I stayed in Bastille, which is a part of Paris, right? And we used to go to the week and a half that we were there. We went to this cool ass croissant place that made a limited amount of croissants. They had espresso, and they had a couple pastries, and that was it. And every time we go, it was like 6 o'clock in the morning. We stand in line. There were about 50 people in line. So if you didn't get in line right within this time, and there were some cool, beautiful people there. And I was like, man, I could be, I can live here and
so the cool Frenchman just gets up at 5:30 to get in line.
Yeah, early to rise. Early to rise.
Limited run of croissants.
Read the newspaper. But yeah, I think there's something about he's not as hollow as I thought he was, and I think that is really just kind of a sign to, you know, when you grow up, you feel like you have to be like the people around you, you know?
Right.
And that's it. You know, when you make the choice to do something different, it just. And I don't think that the ending of this movie is as inconclusive as people keep saying. I've read like 20 reviews because I'm like, why do I like this movie so much? And the reviews seem to be so like the ending is inconclusive, or it didn't make any sense. It made perfect sense to me. Sometimes, I mean, are we going to spoil it, or we're not going to?
I don't know if we have to spoil it. If we just want to say that at the end, he seems to be accepting that his situation has kind of blown up. Like that new life he found has kind of blown up. But and he's just accepting of that, as opposed to trying to do anything to fix it. And I think that is the thing that might be. Maybe that's throwing some people off. I thought that really spoke to the way this character is oriented, that he's just like, okay, like he's almost a sort of just, you know, don't be sad it's over, be glad it happened is a little bit in this character. But I think you're right, Ronald. That part was very striking, that the way that what some people would call unresolved.
Was very
it was like it's about something unresolved, but that doesn't mean the movie is unresolved.
With the information that he found out, there was no way that he could have lived the life that he wanted to live. There's no other way around it. I mean, in people's imaginations, you may have been able to, but there's no way you could live that.
And not to mention beyond what he found out, like what he did.
Yeah.
Like when that part, like, again, no spoilers, but there's something that happens that he's a part of, and when that happens, there's no reality in which he continues his life, you know, of comfort that he's found in Paris. Like,
and it's down to what I was saying before about what you see on screen with the character, what the movie chooses to show you. The movie chooses to show you sort of a sanitized version of that, but it's owning up to the reality of what happened, and the reaction to what he did is very real.
Yes,
and he's treated differently after that. And it's like, we feel that go away. And you know what movie it reminded me of? I don't know if you guys saw this movie, but it had a similar sort of arc in the last, like it was heading towards a certain destination that was similar, is The Pledge.
Oh, yeah.
Jack Nicholson's character in that does a very similar thing as far as like his he's got an opportunity to have like a life, and then his obsession and his life have a clash, and he chooses the obsession over the life.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
And it's very tragic. I mean, that movie is an extremely upsetting movie because you really do wish, similar to this character, although I do think that maybe in The Pledge, he's a little bit more dynamic of a character, so it's more emotionally raw. But you found yourself kind of wishing happiness for this character of Matt Damon in this movie, you know, like you kind of want him to find something.
Absolutely.
And you're a little sad to see that that pivotal moment when you see him having to go, all right, what am I all about? And he has to choose, and what he chooses, sets the tone for the ending we're talking about.
Yeah. I don't know. I thought the movie was much better than I thought it would be. So this would definitely be something I feel like most people I'd recommend it to would probably enjoy it. I mean, I think there's enough there, especially, you know, again, he's a star. I mean, I think Matt Damon is, you know, he's not, I mean, this year he's actually got a couple of movies coming out, but he hasn't been in a ton recently. But I just feel like, you know, when he does pop up, I feel like he's always interesting. And I mean, he's always, it turns in really solid performances. And I mean, this is another one I think that's a little more toned down, but I mean, like really tuned into what's happening with his character through the whole time of the movie. So I don't know. I'd recommend checking it out. I think it's pretty good.
Yeah. Absolutely. Cool.
What else? Anything else you guys want to mention?
I think that's all.
And he also rans. Cool.
I would mention just very quickly, I've started watching a couple of new Netflix shows, and I have not finished their seasons, but I really enjoyed the first couple episodes of The Chair, which is a new kind of sort of sitcom about academia. And it's, you know, it's got some of our favorite character actors in it, but what's really kind of interesting is how it goes after this, you know, that venue of the academic world, which is very fertile for a sitcom type treatment, especially a kind of a, you know, single camera, like a prestige style sitcom. But then you bring in the kind of, you know, there's a lot of stuff to then tackle within like the kind of social themes that we've been talking about. There's like the racial aspect and the gender aspect and the kind of ageism in different directions. And Sandra Oh is a great lead character, and Jay Duplass is good. I mean, everybody in this is kind of like playing their type, and it's almost like it actually from the first episode felt very like, wow, this is really just one of those smart, fast character comedies that's like Jay Duplass's character in particular is like this guy who you're used to liking this character, and yet this show like defies you liking this guy. But you feel the rhythms of the story where you're supposed to find him kind of charming, but you're going like, wait a minute, this guy is just like the premise behind him is a little bit that he's this white professor who kind of gets by while there's a black woman and the character played by Sandra Oh. You feel like they've had to struggle more to get where they're, you know, get close to tenure and to get where they're at in their careers. And here's this guy who's kind of failing upwards, or at least in a holding pattern, and he's a complete fuck up. You know, little things like that I bet over the course of the season are really going to develop into some kind of a storyline. But just from the first episode, it's a great job of drawing in all the characters. And like I said, you'll love some of the character actors that show up in this thing. And then the other thing I want to mention, we invoked Get Out earlier, and there's another show that's got like, okay, now Catherine Keener is like, okay, I can be creepy.
Oh yeah.
And this show is very bizarre, but
I've only cherry flavor.
Yeah, brand new cherry flavor, which is like Catherine Keener plays a witch in that, and it is one of the I mean, just after I've watched 3 of them, it's crazy. I mean, it's like, it's not that crazy. It's not that crazy if you've read a lot of horror fiction or you've seen a lot of the kind of stories that people tell, maybe in comics and stuff, but it's very raw and just, it's got one moment of like physical abuse in it that is so shocking and changes the tone of the story you're watching. But outside of that, most of the biggest moments have been these kind of gross out moments that are, or just shocking moments that are tied to the sort of horror premise. And it's a little stilted, and there's maybe some parts where the tone, they're kind of finding their way. But once you're established into like the plot of the season, I would say it was a really like I can't wait to watch more to see what happens in the thing, but it might not be everyone's cup of tea. It's gonna be kind of too much for some folks. Okay. And I think that's it. I think those two shows, they're both Netflix things and they're both brand new right now. So I'm gonna probably watch an episode of The Chair and what's it called? Brand New Cherry Flavor tonight when we finish recording.
Cool. That's exciting, man. I want to check those out.
I'm also gonna have some greasy fry bread. Greasy fry bread. Did you watch Reservation Dogs, or am I the only one that watched it?
No, sorry.
Yes,
okay.
yes. That's a great show, man.
Shows do a good job with fake rap music. I find like I love Paperboy, and I think Greasy Fry Bread could be a hit.
Yeah, I think that's it for me. Steve, you?
I don't think I'm good. I think that's it, really.
Okay.
Saw enough movies this week.
Yeah.
Movieshmovie.com is the website. You can go there to check out all the past episodes of the podcast. You can subscribe to the podcast on that page by hitting the link to whichever your favorite podcast app is. And if any of those podcast apps happen to have an option to review, rate, or share the podcast, any of those three things, if you could do one of them, it'd be much appreciated. We also have all the socials, so Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. We're there /Movie Schmovie. If you can find us there, maybe just follow us there if you want to keep in touch with what we're putting out, because we post everything there as well on a weekly basis. But most importantly, the podcast, if you can subscribe, so we know who's listening and we can reach out every week. I don't know what's coming up in the next couple of weeks. I know 2 weeks, hopefully we'll have some chance at seeing Shang-Chi. But I don't know, maybe we can plan out some sort of themed episode or a list episode, something a little different.
Yeah.
We've been doing a few catch-ups here recently, but it'd be cool to maybe do something like that. But you'll see soon enough, fellow listeners. And, so will I. I'm curious myself.
Yeah, you consider fellow listeners. You consider us to be listeners of the show.
Yeah, I'm listening every week.
Right.
To make sure
who else?
We sound like a bunch of fools, you know what I mean?
We're the first listeners.
I'm like, we are the early adopters of this pod. Present company included. But yeah, thanks so much for listening. And as always, you made our day. Thanks.
Bye.